William, you're very welcome. Every time a theologian comes to Nottingham, I want to ask them one question. Why study theology? Now, before you answer it, I'll tell you why I'm asking that question. For the last 40 years, I've been talking to theologians, and every theologian knows what they mean by theology, and yet everyone has their own definition of theology. You not only have been in the theology business a long time, but you've written a number of major works. So why study theology, and how has that come out in your different works?
Well, I guess I would have my definition of theology, insofar as I've got one, as a kind of etymological one. So I would see theology as thinking logically about God. So I would see theology as an attempt to think systematically and logically about God. And I suppose I would see theology as helpful to understand one's own experiences, or if I were going to put it another way, to understand the human condition. So I see theology as dealing with the perennial issues that face the human race: bereavement, loss, pain, the finitude of existence. I see all those things. And then on the other side, the infinite sense of God, the infinite sense of the universe, the place of human beings in the universe, the purpose of human history, the purpose of the church, the understanding of revelation coming from an infinite God to finite human beings. And I would see that all somehow made sense of by an attempt to theologize it, or to rationally explore it. So I guess I see theology as an answer to make sense of the whole caboodle, of the whole shooting match, if you like. I mean, for me, I do take the view that theology deals with important issues. I suppose I can sometimes get impatient with theologians who are arguing about how many angels can dance on a pin. And for me, I think theology at its best is dealing with the great issues that face the church and, of course, face the human race. So for me, theologians ought to bend their intellects to the great issues of the day, whatever those great issues might be, rather than to footle around in the footnotes. That would be my view.
One issue, we're talking about making sense, which is, of course, the great human endeavour. But theologians also belong to a community, and nearly every theologian I know belongs to a community whom he or she would call a church, or some basis in the word ecclesia. How does the making sense, which is an individual quest and it's a task that an individual theologian takes up, how does that relate to the experience of the ecclesia that they belong to?
I think that's very difficult. I reflect on my own experience. It begins as an individual and ends up with an appreciation that actually lots of individuals have gone down the same road that I've gone down. And in my individual case, life seems entirely purposeless and meaningless, growing up at a time when the French existentialists are all the rage, and reading Camus and Sartre, and thinking that there isn't any point to human existence is a cruel joke, and then finding an answer actually in Christ being suddenly a personal truth, someone who makes sense of it, who is the Logos, who is the Word, who is the way, who is the person who makes sense, who is the light who shines. And from understanding who Christ is, one then sees, yes, there is a church of which Christ is the head and the foundation. And so from the personal experience, there comes the collective experience.
One other interesting thing is that every theologian, whether they're thinking in terms of their individual or their collective experience, is dealing with the great questions of now. As you said, let's not fiddle around in the footnotes. Let's address the urgent issues. So we're focused on the now and on the future. But of course also theology as a way of acting, as opposed to is always connected to traditions. How does the theologian relate to... I think I sometimes envy the philosopher. The philosopher can almost say, now is year zero. But the theologian, even if it's just picking up the New Testament, is picking up a book which has a 1900-year history. How does the act of being a theologian how do you see your relationship to the whole tradition issue?
Well, if I speak as a Pentecostal, I could say, I would believe that in heaven I would meet St. Paul, and I would meet, William Booth or John Wesley or the great saints of the past, and I would see, if you like, the church as a huge community stretching across time, and so I would see myself as belonging to that group. So I would see myself as in dialogue with and learning from the experiences of people who've gone on before. So from that point of view, I think the tradition is, these people have trodden the road, they've faced the difficulties, they've gone through the challenges, the persecutions, the problems, the bereavements, the sufferings, or the moments of exaltation and illumination. And all this has happened, and I can learn from these people. And I think that's quite a biblical notion, because the notion of the Old Testament, these things are for our example, and we take these things and we apply them to ourselves as best we may.
And of course there's the long tradition in Christianity that the today of theology is a much larger moment than the today of the calendar. You've also written a great deal, and I'm intrigued. Which of your books are you most proud of? I know that I know I love all my children equally, but I'm going to be awkward. If you had to pick out a book, which one would you pick out?
I quite like my little, very short introduction to Pentecostalism.
Yeah.
I think that probably says quite a lot in a short space. I think it's 36,000 words, 16 illustrations. I think
heavens.
Says quite a lot in a compact way.
Right. And then tell me, you've written, of course, a big monster on Pentecost, and a large book. How many thousand words is that?
Oh, it's about 100 and something, 10, I think. That's the SCM book, part of the series, Core Text series. And I've tried to look at the theology of Pentecostalism, the sociology of Pentecostalism, and the history of Pentecostalism. So I actually look at each three, so history, theology, and sociology.
And when you say the sociology of Pentecostalism, which book would you consider to be the key in that?
Well, I mean, my SCM book deals with the sociology of Pentecostalism to some extent. But also I've written a book on what's called apostolic networks in Britain, which tries to show how the neo-Pentecostals or the charismatics function in a network society, if you like.
So in a sense, you're saying the theologian, apart from making sense, he also has to try and become a navigator for other people through, like your work on networks. You're trying to help other people to understand what's happening.
Yes, I am. And I mean, I'm actually someone who is quite happy to put events in chronological order. Right. Because I'm conscious that the causation must go from the past to the present to the future. It can't really go the other way. So you have to put things in order, just in sequence, and then try to make sense of what's happened by seeing what happened first, what happened second, what happened third. Okay.
William, thank you very much for sharing with me. I know it's a very hard question, but by sharing with me your vision of theology, you've helped me to see a couple of aspects of my understanding of theology, and I hope you've helped many of our viewers clarify their notion of what they're doing when they act as theologians. Thank you.